So, whatever happened to GORT from the day the Earth stood still? Let's find out. Movies,
music, and monsters.
Hey guys, Dan Monroe here from Media Master Design, where we talk about movies, music, and monsters. 20,000 subscribers in just under 6 weeks. Unbelievable. And sometimes I think that YouTube creators don't give enough credit to their audience. I don't think you can possibly say thank you enough, because without you, there would be no this. So I am definitely going to hammer that home. Thank you. The incredible sci-fi classic The Day the Earth Stood Still was released on December 28th, 1951. Directed by legendary Hollywood director Robert Wise, who also directed West Side Story, The Sound of Music, and Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
I was under contract to 20th Century Fox Studios, and I got a call from Darryl Zanuck, and he said, you should go see Julian Blaustein, the producer here. He's got a script I think is very interesting, and I think it might be something that you'd like. And he handed me a copy of The Day the Earth Stood Still. I thought it was a marvelous way to tell a science fiction film. I liked so much about what it had to say.
Amazing cast with Michael Rennie and Patricia Neal. This is really quite interesting. When The Day the Earth Stood Still was greenlit by Fox, the concept of the story was based on a 1940 short story called Farewell to the Master. And Farewell to the Master was actually the original working title of The Day the Earth Stood Still. Before the final title was decided upon, it actually had a lot of different working titles. Journey to the World, The Day the World Stopped, and finally, The Day the Earth Stood Still. Such a pivotal movie at such a great time in Hollywood history, and it led the way to both Forbidden Planet in 1956 and 2001 in 1968. But we are here to talk about GORT.
Then we had the problem of the robot, of GORT. We knew we had to have somebody inside a suit. The GORT being is a foam rubber suit with aluminum paint. We got a special designer in to play around with looks and designs and practicality. We had something that was practical.
Now, the character of GORT was loosely inspired by the character Nut or Newt. I think we're just going to go with Newt. From the short story Farewell to the Master. Newt, like GORT, was also a 8-foot-tall giant, but he was made of a greenish-colored metal with more human features than GORT. But he did have red glowing eyes, just like GORT. Well, at least I assume GORT's eye was red. Pretty hard to tell in black and white. GORT was the member of a race of robots created by an interplanetary confederation. His job? Patrol the universe and keep the peace by destroying the aggressor. Man, we could certainly use that in 2024. This guy could not only vaporize tanks, but he had enough firepower to destroy an entire planet. Makes me wonder where George Lucas got that idea. The extremely tall actor inside GORT, well, his name was Locke Martin. This guy was 7'7". I'm 6'9", so I would look short next to this guy. Locke Martin worked for a company called the Arden Milk Farms Company, and he later went on in Hollywood to play basically monsters. Kind of cool. He eventually wound up being the doorman at Grauman's Chinese Theater. Now, this guy was really, really big, really tall, and he had glandular issues. And that made him a little bit on the weak side, so he really couldn't be inside the GORT costume for more than 15 or 20 minutes at a time. Okay, the costume. Let's talk about this awesome costume. The suit was made and designed by a guy named Addison Hare from basically foam rubber or neoprene in order to make GORT look as if it was just one solid piece of space metal. They created 2 suits out of this rubber neoprene material. One would lace up in the front and one would lace up in the back.
We had to have 2 suits, you see. The main suit, when he was facing it, had a zipper up the back. but occasionally had the need to have a shot where he was going away from us. So we had to have another suit with a zipper up the front so the back would be solid.
Then, through clever editing, you would never think there was any seams at all. There is one shot where you can see the lace-up ties in the front of GORT. Yeah, it's a movie mistake, but it's kind of cool. When looking at this movie in either high def or 4K, there are shots where you can definitely see the rubber is bending a bit and you can see the texture of the neoprene, but that never bothered me, and I don't think the audience cared either. Now, along with the 2 rubber suits and the helmet, we'll get to the helmet in just a second. They also made a freestanding 8-foot-tall fiberglass version of GORT. This was the static GORT that would just kind of stand motionless outside the ship. This was also the GORT that was encased by the military in the plastic stuff. And supposedly this was the GORT that they would use for all the close-ups of the laser shooting, where the visor would come up and the laser beam would come out. Personally, I'm not really sure about that. I found conflicting reports. Some people said yes, it was the static version, and some people said that there was a 3/4 scale special effects head that was made specifically for the visor coming up and the laser coming out. I don't know. Now, even though GORT was 8 feet tall, well, that wasn't tall enough for the director. He wanted GORT taller. They took lifts and put them on the bottom of GORT's feet to make the guy even bigger than he was. And how did the actor see out of the costume? Again, it sort of depends on who you're listening to.
The top of his head reached the neckline of the robot's suit. The effects people put in prisms so that Lock Martin was looking straight ahead inside the suit, but he was seeing out many, many inches, maybe a foot above his headline.
I was lucky enough to meet Lock Martin, all 7'7" of him. He could look out of the air holes in the bottom of the head and the chin, but only could see straight down.
But then again, there are pictures of Lock Martin inside the costume, and you can literally see his eyes right where the visor would be. Who knows? It's a mystery. Now, like I said, there were 2 neoprene rubber suits made, but there was only 1 helmet. When they were done filming the movie, the helmet just kind of got lost in storage until it was finally discovered by a guy at Western Costumes. Can you imagine opening that box and knowing what it is? What in the world? It's GORT! So, to verify that it actually was what he thought it was, he took the helmet over to Bob Burns. And Bob studied it and said, yep, that's it. The original GORT helmet was then restored to its absolute glory. The visor was not with the helmet when they found it, but the ears were. However, the ears were not in good shape, and even though the ears still exist, the guy who restored it decided to put new ears on and a brand new visor, and man, is this thing gorgeous. Even Will Robinson from Lost in Space had a chance to enjoy this beauty. This original restored GORT head was eventually auctioned off in 2012 for $150,000. Now, as for the 2 rubber suits, well, they were rubber. And like most movie props that were rubber, they just did not survive the test of time. The suits suffered the same fate as the legs from the original Lost in Space robot. That was them then. This is them now. Oh, what a shame. Now, the 8-foot fiberglass statue of GORT, well, that survived. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, they actually used that GORT in a number of children's television shows. GORT was eventually rescued by the same guy who rescued Robbie the robot, Bill Malone. Bill had this GORT completely restored to its former glory, but then I lost track of it. I know that Bill Malone sold Robbie, and I wasn't sure if he still had GORT. I'm fairly certain, but not positive, that GORT is currently owned by the ex-CEO of Nike, Mark Parker. But that's not the end of the GORTs. There was another GORT. A very small GORT filming miniature. Now, this small GORT miniature was in the collection of legendary collector John Azarian. and it finally sold at auction in 2019 for, I don't know, I gotta look that up. There you go. Now, if you want to see a really good replica and you happen to be at the Carnegie Science Center, they've got one. The Robot Hall of Fame where GORT was inducted into in 2006. And if you're really a fan of GORT and you want to own one, well, you can. Fred Barton, otherwise known as the Robot Man, sells them on his website. Check them out. Link in the description. So GORT definitely had his Hollywood day in the sun, but that wasn't the last we heard of GORT. The character made a very interesting reappearance in the 2008 reimagining of The Day the Earth Stood Still. God. But that, my friends, is the topic of another video. I've got a ton of new videos coming up. Puffin Stuff, Logan's Run, Space Academy, Land of the Lost, and so much more. And if you're new to this channel and you like this kind of stuff, please consider liking and subscribing. As always, if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and I will do my best to try to answer them for you. And please feel free to stop back anytime as we continue our conversation on movies, music, and monsters. Movies,
music, and monsters.